On a quiet spring night in southwestern Minnesota, a young man calls his parents for help. He's nowhere near where he thinks he is. He promises to walk toward the lights he sees in the distance. 47 minutes into that phone call, he says two words, and everything goes silent. No footprints, no body, no answers, only questions that echo across empty gravel roads. This is the story of Brandon Swanson, a 19-year-old who vanished under circumstances that still puzzle investigators and haunt a family. This is how the night unfolded, minute by minute, and why, even now, the question remains, where did Brandon go? It's Wednesday, May 14th, 2008. In the quiet farming town of Canby, Minnesota, spring has finally taken hold. College students are celebrating the end of the semester. It's the kind of place where everyone knows someone, and where the night can feel endless, with nothing but the wind to interrupt it. Brandon Swanson is 19 years old. He's just finished his first year studying wind turbine technology at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. Friends describe him as polite, responsible, and steady, the kind of person you could count on. He has plans for the summer, goals for the future. Tonight, though, it's about unwinding, catching up with friends, and marking the end of exams. Brandon spends the early part of the evening at a gathering in Lind, then drives to Canby for another get-together. Witnesses later say he drank, but not heavily, enough to socialize, but not to impair him. As midnight passes, he gets in his green Chevrolet Lumina for the familiar drive home to Marshall. The route from Canby to Marshall is simple on a map, but in the black of night, it can be a maze. Long stretches without landmarks, roads that change from pavement to gravel without warning, and everywhere the vast silent fields. At around 1:15 a.m., Brandon's journey takes an unexpected turn. Somewhere between towns, the Lumina veers off the road and comes to rest in a shallow ditch. The car isn't damaged beyond repair, and Brandon isn't hurt, but the tires spin uselessly when he tries to get back on the road. With no immediate help in sight, Brandon does what most of us would do. He calls home. His parents, Annette and Brian Swanson, answer. Brandon explains what happened. He sounds calm, maybe a little frustrated, but not panicked. He tells them he thinks he's just outside Lind, a small town only a short drive from Marshall. He can see lights in the distance. Annette and Brian get in their truck and head toward where Brandon believes he is. He tells them he'll flash his car's lights so they can spot him. So on roadside, they scan the roadside, searching for a familiar vehicle, but they don't see him, because, as they'll soon learn, he isn't in Lind at all. On this night, the distances are greater than they seem, and the darkness hides more than it reveals. Brandon is already far from where he thinks he is, and every minute that passes is a step deeper into the unknown. For the next 47 minutes, Brandon stays on the phone with his parents. His voice is clear, steady, not slurred, not distressed. He's sure he's near Lind, Minnesota. He can even see what he thinks are town lights twinkling ahead. Brian and Annette drive slowly, scanning every turnoff. They pass grain silos, barns, open fields, but there's no sign of their son's green Chevy Lumina. Each time they think they've gone too far, Brandon assures them they're close. When they can't find each other, Brandon decides to walk toward the lights he sees in the distance, telling his parents to meet him there. He mentions cutting across fields and gravel roads. To him, it feels like a shortcut. To anyone who's driven these back roads at night, it's a gamble. Fields can stretch for miles, and roads curve away from where you think they're going. As they talk, Brandon describes landmarks, a fence line, a couple of gravel intersections, the sound of running water nearby. His parents try to match these to places they know, but nothing fits. It's as though he's walking through a version of the county that only exists for him. Then, a change in his tone. Brandon says he's reached the edge of a field, near what he believes is the Yellow Medicine River. He decides to follow it, still convinced it will lead him toward the lights. Their conversation stays calm, even casual at moments. Annette later recalls they never imagined he was in real danger. But the truth is, by this point, Brandon isn't anywhere near Lind. He's over 20 miles away, on the outskirts of the tiny town of Taunton. and he's walking deeper into the darkness. In the dead of night, with no landmarks and only the sound of wind and water to guide him, Brandon is making a journey no one will ever fully retrace. For nearly an hour, Brandon Swanson stays on the line with his parents. It's now after 2 a.m., and the conversation has taken on an almost surreal quality. In one world, Brian and Annette are in their car, headlights cutting through the rural dark. In another, their son is walking alone through an unlit expanse of fields and waterways. Brandon describes heading toward more lights in the distance. He mentions crossing a small stream, maybe knee-deep water, and climbing a slight incline on the other side. His voice never hints at fear. His tone is steady and control. Then, in an instant, everything changes. Brandon's words cut off mid-sentence, replaced by a sharp intake of breath. His voice rises, startled, and he says two words his parents will never forget.
Oh,
And then silence. Brian and Annette call back immediately, thinking the signal has dropped. The phone rings and rings, but Brandon never answers. They try again and again. Each call rolls to voicemail. The air in the car turns heavy. That kind of oppressive silence when you know something is wrong, but can't yet say it out loud. That was the last time anyone heard from Brandon Swanson. No sound of a struggle, no cry for help, no clear sign of where or why he disappeared. Only a single, unfinished sentence swallowed by the night. By the time the first light of dawn reaches Lind, Minnesota, Brandon Swanson has been missing for nearly 5 hours. His parents haven't slept. They've driven through the night, retracing their route again and again, searching for anything, a shadow, a reflection, a sign. Brian and Annette finally call the police. At first, the reaction isn't what they hoped for.
It's not uncommon for young men to cool off after a night out. He'll turn up.
But Brandon's parents know this isn't about cooling off. He wouldn't just vanish without a word. By mid-morning, law enforcement officers join the search. They start with the obvious, Brandon's last known location. Using cell tower data, they trace the call to a rural area near the tiny town of Taunton, and there, they find his car. The car is in perfect working order, no flat tire, no sign of an accident. It's not even stuck, just resting on the edge of a shallow ditch along a gravel road. And here's the strange part. The location doesn't match where Brandon thought he was. He had been certain he was near Lind, just a short walk from home, but the car is nearly 25 miles away. Search teams comb the surrounding fields. They bring in K9 units, bloodhounds trained to pick up even the faintest human scent. The dogs follow a trail, leading away from the car, along a gravel road toward a field. The scent heads toward a nearby riverbank, then abruptly stops, not fades, stops, as if Brandon simply ceased to exist beyond that point. No footprints in the mud, no torn clothing on branches, no wallet, no phone, no Brandon. For the next several days, volunteers, police, and search and rescue teams scour the area. Helicopters sweep the fields from above, boats drag the river, neighbors check abandoned barns and sheds, but each effort ends the same way, with nothing. It's as if Brandon Swanson walked into the night and was swallowed whole. In the days after Brandon's disappearance, theories start to take shape, none of them quite fit. Some believe Brandon slipped, fell into the Yellow Medicine River, and drowned. It's the most straightforward explanation, but search teams dragged the water for days. No sign of a body, no clothing snagged on debris, and the river was unusually calm. Others point to the way his scent trail simply stopped. Could he have been picked up by someone, a passing motorist, a farmer, or someone with darker intentions? If that's true, was it a good Samaritan, or a predator who saw an opportunity? There's also the question of his location confusion. Brandon was convinced he was near Lind, close enough to walk home, but in reality he was miles away, in a completely different county. Did he take a wrong turn in the dark? Was he disoriented, or was he deliberately misdirected? And then there's the strangest clue of all, his final words to his father. Oh, a slip, a sudden fall, or the moment he saw something or someone he didn't expect. In the absence of answers, the theories multiply, but every possibility leaves a new question unanswered. Days turn to weeks, weeks to months. The fields where Brandon was last heard are now silent. The air is colder. The search parties are gone. By winter, hope is becoming harder to hold on to. Investigators have scoured every road, every ditch, every grove of trees within miles. They've drained creeks, searched grain bins, even combed through abandoned buildings. But the trail never restarts. Brandon's phone is never found. His bank account remains untouched. No activity, no sightings, nothing. With each passing month, the case loses momentum. New incidents demand the sheriff's attention. Media coverage drifts to fresher headlines, and Brandon Swanson becomes a name spoken mainly in whispers. For Brandon's parents, the silence is the hardest part. They're left with a phone call that ended mid-sentence and no answers to fill the silence that followed. By the end of the second year, the case is officially considered cold. The file sits in the sheriff's office, thick with reports, maps, and photographs, a puzzle without its final pieces. But cold doesn't mean forgotten. Not for his parents, and not for those who still believe the truth is out there somewhere, waiting to be found. In the wake of Brandon's disappearance, his parents refused to let their son's case fade quietly into the background. If they couldn't find him, they could still make sure what happened that night wouldn't happen to someone else. On that May night in 2008, when Brian and Annette Swanson called police to report their son missing, they were told it wasn't an emergency. After all, he was an adult, and adults, they were told, have the right to vanish. But Brandon's parents knew every second mattered. He was lost, possibly injured, maybe in danger, yet valuable hours slipped away. They took their frustration to lawmakers, pushing for a change in Minnesota's protocols for missing adults, and in 2009, they succeeded. It's called Brandon's Law, and it requires law enforcement in Minnesota to immediately begin investigating any report of a missing adult. If there's reasonable suspicion they may be in danger, no waiting, no delays. Thanks to Brandon's Law, families in crisis would no longer be told to wait. Search efforts would begin immediately, because the first hours are the most critical. They couldn't save their son that night, but they could save others. And in the years since, they have. But laws can't solve every mystery, and Brandon's case is still missing its ending. Years have passed since Brandon Swanson vanished into the darkness of that early May morning. The search has ended, but the questions remain. Where was he when the line went dead? Did he stumble into the cold waters of the Yellow Medicine River? Was he injured, unable to call for help? Or did something or someone else cross his path? Some believe Brandon fell into the river, swept away in the current, but no trace, no clothing, no belongings, no remains has ever been found downstream. Others suggest he may have reached shelter but met danger there. Rural Minnesota at night is an unforgiving place, but it's not empty. The Swansons say they don't believe foul play was involved, yet that silence on the phone haunts them still. If you're intrigued by unsolved mysteries and chilling cases, check out my playlist, True Crime, Murders, and Disappearances, for more unsolved cases.